What's up, guys? My name is Elle, and welcome to or back to the Coffee Shop Project. This is the second part of my interview with Ren Doughty of Batdorf and Bronson. We're talking about perfecting your personal morning coffee ritual and then ending with a little chat about Ren's second passion, motorcycles. If you haven't seen part one yet, I am linking it up in the iCard here. Check it out, subscribe down below, and let's get into it. You were talking about the same thing, like with the extraction with espresso versus French pressing, and then mentioned something about like the degassing process. How does that correlate all into brewing? Yeah, maybe I phrased this wrong. I was reading an article. I said, so you touched on degassing in a previous interview.
Oh, degassing, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All that means is freshly roasted coffee is giving off carbon dioxide for the first 48 to 72 hours after it roasts. When you think about having fresh baked bread or maybe a fresh cake out of the oven, fresh sounds really, really good. But there are other things that you make in your kitchen where we all know they taste better on the second day or they taste better on the third day. And freshly roasted coffee is a treat that everyone should be able to enjoy at least once in their life. And by freshly roasted, I mean it just got roasted and now you're grinding it and brewing it. Freshly roasted coffee that is still degassing can taste a little bit grassy. And I sometimes call that flavor agricultural. And it's always curious when you're talking about flavors because they're subjective. I guess what I mean is if you grabbed a handful of dried field grass and you chewed it up, whatever that taste is, that's the taste that I'm thinking about when I talk about something tasting grassy or agricultural.
Okay.
If you take some freshly roasted coffee and you brew it 10 minutes after it roasts, it will have some of that agricultural flavor in it. But if you took that same coffee 48 hours later or 72 hours later and roasted it, and I'm sorry, not roasted, but brewed it, the grassy taste would be gone and the other tastes that you want to be in there would be more prominent. You will notice that all good specialty coffee roasters have a valve in their bag of coffee.
Right,
Sometimes you have to look for it a little bit. It's definitely visible once you've opened the bag and you can see it on the inside. But these are one-way valves and they let carbon dioxide out and they don't let oxygen in. That's the reason these better quality coffees have these valves on the bag, is so that the bag won't expand and blow up. I know these valves work because if you ever take a bag of coffee on an airplane that has one of these valves in it, when you land, it'll seem like that bag has been shrink wrapped, like you can actually see every bean on the outside of the bag, like right through the wrapper. And it's because when that plane went up, the oxygen or even the carbon dioxide that was in between the beans in the bag was able to leave through the one-way valve. And then as the plane descended, oxygen wasn't able to go back into the bag. So that's how you get that shrink wrap effect. I wasn't planning on doing this, but my computer is in a room next to my kitchen, so I was able to go grab this bag. We always put our roast date
let me look at mine.
on the bottom of every bag of our coffee.
Yes, mine was roasted on the 17th and it is the 24th now, so it's pretty fresh.
Right, it's pretty fresh.
Yeah.
Yours might be a little fresher than mine. Oh no, mine was roasted on the 19th. And on the back here, I don't know if you can see it, and you have it on yours too, but here's that
like a little circle thing right there.
Yeah, here's that valve.
Okay.
Exactly. One thing I want to be sure to mention, because I think it is one of the most special things about our company, we keep no roasted coffee inventory. Wow. If you went to either of our roasteries, we have one in Olympia, Washington, and one in Atlanta, Georgia. If you went to either of those roasteries, they're filled with shelves of burlap sacks of green coffee and these 150-pound bags, usually stacked on pallets. But we will have little to no roasted coffee anywhere around because we only roast to order. If you go online and you order just one bag of coffee, or if you are one of our larger customers and you order hundreds of pounds of coffee, either way, we don't roast your coffee until you order it. So if you went to our website right now, which is www.batdorfcoffee.com, and you ordered some coffee, that coffee, Someone isn't going to look at your order and then go pull those bags of coffee off of a shelf. They're literally going to put in an order for that coffee to roast the next day. And your coffee will roast that morning and it will ship that afternoon.
No way. Okay, I'm gonna have to do
Depending
that.
on where you are in the country, you'll often get it, within 2 or 3 days, which corresponds very nicely to the degassing period, right?
Yeah.
We want that coffee to degas from 48 to 72 hours anyway to be at its best. So you're literally receiving the coffee that was roasted just for you, but it's had a couple of days to let the degassing occur. So it should be perfect when you open it.
So after you just explained everything about like creating the coffee and brewing it at home and then your company's standards, coffee's subjective, but in your opinion, what is the best way from grind size to brewing method to the degassing period to experience Batdorf and Bronson coffee?
I'm partial to a French press because I
Okay.
feel like a French pressed coffee gives you a very full-bodied flavor with very low bitterness. The amount of acidity that's in your coffee will vary based on that coffee variety and how it was roasted. Let me say that acidity in coffee is not a bad thing any more than acidity is a bad thing in any food that you like. You have some lasagna and you taste the tomato sauce that's in that lasagna, you're enjoying some acidity. And if it was missing, the lasagna might seem flat or not as fresh to you, and coffee is the same way. We want to brew it in a way that we are leaving bitterness behind, but the acidity, which might be the treble notes, like if you think of the taste of coffee as a chord, like a musical chord, the acidity is the treble notes in your coffee. Another thing I like about a French press is in a French press, at the bottom of your cup, you will see a little bit of silt. And those aren't grounds that escaped the filter. That's actually the insoluble solids of the coffee that were allowed to go through the screen mesh filter of a French press, but they would have been trapped going through a paper filter. This is a subjective taste, but when I'm drinking a cup of French pressed coffee, after I'm about halfway down, I will like almost involuntarily swirl my cup around because I'm trying to reincorporate those insoluble solids back into the coffee because I think that's a desirable component and flavor of the coffee. Let me say this, people might have their own favorite brewing method, but doing things correctly for each brewing method is of the utmost importance. And saying that you like coffee done correctly with the French press more than coffee done correctly with a Chemex, or coffee done correctly with an AeroPress, or coffee done correctly with a good quality Bonavita 8-cup drip brewer, any kind of different pour over method you might use. The biggest factor in all of those is that the fundamentals are done correctly. Saying that you like one brewing method over another is kind of like saying that you like, you go to a chili cook-off and you pick your top favorite chilies.
Yes.
Well, even though chili 1 is different from chili 2, you find them both delicious, but they're different. But you would still call them both chili. That's kind of how I think of different brewing methods for coffee. They each have their own characteristics. People will often talk about a Chemex or coffee that is brewed through a paper filter being exceptionally clean. And it is exceptionally clean because some of the oils and all of the sediment was retained in that filter. So it's really just about your personal taste. My friends will often tease me thinking that I'm being critical of how people drink their coffee, and I'm not. I am a coffee libertarian. I want you to enjoy your coffee the way you enjoy it. If you love Dunkin' Donuts coffee, I want you to enjoy the heck out of it. If you like cream and sugar in your coffee or vanilla syrup or caramel, that's how I want you to enjoy it. I'm not sitting around telling everyone, well, your coffee drinking preferences should be like this. What I do like is giving people tools, sometimes things to pay attention to that they haven't paid attention to before, so that they can evaluate and narrow down what they like the most, because it's about pleasing them. It's about pleasing you. You spending money on coffee, whether it's a cup on the go in the morning or you're going to buy some equipment and make really good coffee at home. The end of the day, it's all about, do you like what you're drinking in your cup? That's the important part. And I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't like.
Mhm.
I will tell you that if you keep notes about your coffee drinking experience, you
Mhm.
might find it easier to dial in or fine tune what you like most about certain coffees. So, for example, and I'm just choosing these terms completely randomly, I'm not giving any of them more weight one over another. If you started to note, hey, I actually have figured out that I tend to always love African coffees, and I tend to not prefer Indonesian coffees as much, or I love Central and South American coffees more than African coffees, whatever it is for you. If you start taking notes on that, you will better equip yourself to be spending your hard-earned money on coffee that you love when you go shopping for your coffee.
That's really insightful. You brought like a lot of things to my attention about like I've been really thinking about like where to go next with my journey and becoming a coffee connoisseur, and I'm very inspired now to go like read all about the origins. So for you personally though, I've been wondering, what is your take for your ritual? You're not telling anyone else what to do, but do you think that adding a ton of cream and sugar to coffee destroys the roast and its integrity as a coffee, like how this Dancing Goats blend has like cherry and chocolate and spice? Does it enhance it or take away from it?
The reason that's a complicated question is if you're enjoying it more, then
Yeah.
it's possibly enhancing your experience. When I do coffee tastings, I often encourage people to pretend that they have never tried coffee before
Okay.
and to think of what they're about to taste as a culinary experience more than a coffee evaluation,
Mhm.
and to be open to the understanding that there are as many savory notes in coffee as there are sweet notes. A lot of
Okay.
times people, they're excited to hear that there are notes of tangerine or apricot or blueberry in their coffee. And if you told them that this coffee has hints of oregano, or this coffee tastes a little bit like green olive, or this coffee tastes a little bit like the essence you get when you have a good waffle.
Hmm.
If they haven't been practicing that, that can be information that causes the gears in their brain to kind of grind and crunch a little bit. What I encourage people to do when they're tasting good coffee is this: identify the main coffee flavor right away. Like, there
Okay.
you are, I taste you coffee flavor, and then kind of corral that coffee flavor over off into a corner and say, okay, I taste the coffee. Now, what else do I taste in addition to that traditional coffee flavor? And that's where a lot of the magic can come in. Now you free your mind. And I'm not talking about making stuff up. I'm not talking about the emperor's new clothes. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about being a poser or, trying to impress anybody. I'm simply talking about you thinking clearly about the tastes that you are experiencing. But those tastes might be a little bit like apricot or
Yeah.
peach. Sometimes if you taste that general peach or apricot essence, but it's not as specific as, say, a nectarine or a peach or an apricot, people might say they pick up an essence of stone fruit, which is like the broader category. You
Mhm.
might say you pick up a note of citrus if you get that general citrus essence without it being specific enough to say lemon or grapefruit or tangerine or orange. One of the most delightful things to me about coffee is enjoying the more subtle flavor notes that are there.
That's what I've really been
We,
enjoying as well recently.
we have a coffee called Sky's Mountain Blend. And the very
Okay.
first time I made it in a French press, there was this glorious, enchanting essence that my brain recognized, but I could not put a name to it. I couldn't put a word to it. I couldn't describe it. I recognized it. It's kind of like when you're trying to think of someone's name, or maybe some actor that was in a movie and you can see their face, but you can't come up with their name. And I was thinking about it and thinking about it. And then finally I let go. And about 20 minutes later, my brain goes, ding, clove. It's
Okay.
clove. The flavor that you were tasting, that you're trying to identify, is clove. And I took another sip and I'm like, yep, there it is. It's clove. But if I hadn't been open to that or thinking about that or sensitive to that, I wouldn't have picked that up. And I wasn't trying to impress anybody. It wasn't for some cool story for an interview like 6 years later. It was just my actual coffee experience. All that is to say, I want people to feel confident in their own hearts, that they don't need to necessarily take somebody else's word for what they should or shouldn't like, but they can start more closely paying attention to what they like. And then the more they do that, the more they can be confident that when they make that cup of coffee in the morning, they are absolutely enjoying it. That's my real goal, is for people to be thoroughly in love with that coffee that they're enjoying every day.
So it's all about, I guess, and what I've been consistently hearing, and you've supported it tenfold, is that coffee is a ritual. Figure out how it works for you, do it how you love it, but also be open-minded to every new coffee experience you have, and don't be like, my way is it.
That's great. I mean, that could be like a mission statement.
Someday, maybe, when I have my own roastery, that can be it. Then,
well, I will come visit you, and you can take me on a tour.
Please do. Hopefully COVID will be over and it will be nice and safe to do that. So then, coffee aside, and after all the wisdom that you've shared with brewing and tasting, I gotta ask, why as a second hobby is motorcycles it for you?
Oh, we shouldn't talk about motorcycles because I love motorcycles so much. When I was a kid, I wanted to get a motorcycle. And when I was a teenager, my mom and my grandfather forbade me from having a motorcycle. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. When I was 24, I was a platoon sergeant for the Marine Corps in Desert Storm. And I ended up being put into a platoon full of motorcyclists. All these, Marines had pictures of their motorcycle. They had motorcycle magazines. And I remember actually talking to my wife, Julia, from me being overseas, saying, hey, when I get home, I'm really thinking about getting a motorcycle. And she said, that sounds great. So I took the Motorcycle Safety Foundation class, got my first bike, which was a 1989 Honda Pacific Coast. But since then, I've had more than 60 motorcycles. Ironically, some of my favorite coffee relationships are motorcycle coffee relationships.
Okay.
I'm friends with Alton Brown. He loves great coffee and he loves motorcycles. He actually bought one of my motorcycles from me a few months ago.
Okay.
I'm friends with Ewan McGregor. He loves motorcycles. He loves coffee. So I like the coffee motorcycle
pairing going on.
Yeah, I just do. There's something about being on a motorcycle. If you've never read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, get your hands on a copy and read your way through it. There's something about being on a motorcycle outdoors, leaning into the turns and smelling the cut grass as it goes by. And there's just something intoxicating about it. I mean, I try to lead a very healthy lifestyle, and I'm not going to lie. The reason I try to lead a healthy lifestyle is because I want to be able to ride a motorcycle for as long as I possibly can.
That is the best motivation I've ever heard.
If anyone's listening to this and you are thinking about riding a motorcycle, go online and look up the Motorcycle Foundation, the MSF class. Okay. It's a motorcycle safety class. You don't have to have a motorcycle to take this class. They provide the motorcycle. You have to have a helmet and gloves and boots, but you show up. Part of the class is inside, where they're teaching you the physics of motorcycling and the principles of safe motorcycling. The rest of the class is out in a big parking lot with cones and painted stripes, but no traffic. So, if you do something wrong, you don't get run over by a truck right afterwards. And this class will also help you decide sometimes which kind of motorcycle you want to get. You might go into the class thinking you're going to get a certain type of bike, and by the time you get done with the class, you decide you want a different kind of bike. And it's a really nice thing that you didn't make that decision after you had already bought the kind of bike you didn't want to get.
That is awesome advice also in the safety. I really do appreciate it. Whenever I hear about motorcycles, it's like there's like a stigma around the safety of it, but I've really learned that all of the people that are into motorcycles are so safety first, and I really appreciate that, being a teenage driver who gets hesitant around motorcycles sometimes.
I was actually, I'm gonna name drop. So
okay.
slave.
I can edit this out if you want me to.
No, you don't have to. I'm just saying, for all the people watching who are about to roll their eyes, you can roll their eyes, but you'll see why I'm telling you this story. So I was having lunch with Alton Brown at his studio a few years ago. He actually made lunch for the two of us, and we were sitting out on a little patio, and we were talking about an interview he had done for Atlanta Magazine. He was talking about how he takes his daughter Zoe for rides on the back of his motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably not going to get this word perfect, but it was something like the interviewer said to him, I can't believe that you would, put someone so precious to you on the back of your motorcycle. And he paused and he said, no, he said, I don't think you get it. It's because she is so precious to me that I put her on the back of my motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
It's an experience that he, wanted her to be able to have. First time I put my youngest daughter on the back of a motorcycle, I was being really careful. There was a seat that she couldn't possibly fall out of, and she had a jacket and a good helmet and boots and all that stuff. And I went riding around our neighborhood a little bit, and I stopped and asked her how everything was, and she goes, it's fine. I really thought it would go a little faster. So all three of my kids have grown up on the back of my motorcycle.
That's super cool and cool to have the experience. But anyway, thank you so much for taking an hour out of this crazy holiday season to talk to me and share some advice with my viewers. I really, really appreciate it. And I enjoyed this so much.
You are so welcome. If anyone wants to, they can follow me on Instagram. It's just RenDoughty. That's my name is my Instagram handle. And you can find pictures of me and Alton or pictures of me and Ewan, and then just lots of other coffee or motorcycle or donut related stuff.
Donut. Okay.
I want to leave you with one final thought. Okay. Occasionally my friends will say to me about a different specialty roaster, they will call them our competition. And that term makes me uncomfortable because I don't think of those people as our competition. I think of them as partners, right? I think of counterculture and intelligentsia and, other good specialty independent coffee roasters. Some of those roasters have been purchased by larger companies now, but that's kind of beside my point. My point is that there are enough people out there drinking not very high quality coffee that there's a big enough market out there for all of the roasters to be, providing good quality, freshly roasted specialty coffee to people who want it. And I have so many people that I love in the specialty coffee industry. Batdorf doesn't have enough jobs for all of them. And if it wasn't for the companies they all get to work for, they wouldn't get to work in specialty coffee. So I don't really consider those other independent roasters competitors as much as I consider them partners in this delightful endeavor that we all have to help people enjoy and fall in love with their morning coffee.
Thank you so much for ending on that, because that's always been a question I wanted to ask, but I didn't know if it was like taboo to mention other roasters. So I am glad that I've had that enlightenment. That's the perfect ending note.
Good, I'm glad, Elle. Happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. And thank you for giving me the chance to talk to you and your viewers.